All right. My sense, first of all, good to see everybody. Welcome. My sense at this point is as follows. We, in class number 1, in terms of the entrepreneurship, we touched on the foundation, the fundamentals from a Torah point of view. Class number 2, we touched on what we titled an entrepreneur's head, which meant the mindset necessary. This class, we're gonna conclude with what we're titling an entrepreneur's heart. Now, what I'd like to do for those who are interested from this class forward is to have, I'm open if anybody would like to reach out and continue in beginning to build a business plan. Now that we should have all of the fundamentals in place, and by the way, it's important to review them and good to review them, and they can be reviewed on the YouTube channel on the classes. Once we have these in place, then I think it would be best to pick it up on an individual basis with individual plans for those who have them. So that's how we'll wrap things up today. Okay. Okay, great. All right, good. Okay. How does someone build for himself or herself the heart, the emotional stamina necessary to be a leader, to take his or her area of primary focus and continue to build, to take a shot, get knocked down as we all do from time to time, and then raise his or her sights higher? What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu build into the human being's psyche and emotional capacity and practical expression to enable the human being to build the heart, the emotional wherewithal to set great sights, to build those sights, to take the shots when they come, and they will, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu intentionally brings them on for good reason, and then to set even higher sights. So we're going to start first with the fundamental, which is love of self. You know, where everybody is now very much in the perspective of the 3 weeks and all that it means, and the notion of ahavat chinam and unconditional love for others and so on. All very, very important. But it starts with something infinitely more important, which is establishing and maintaining a love of self. In order for someone to have the resilience to think very big, regardless of the immediate reality, and the immediate reality might be great, but my dream is much greater and seemingly unrealistic, as we've spoken about. There has to be a great sense of love of self. Now, there are a number of ways that we lock in a love of self. We're going to touch on some of the core, some of the fundamentals. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to put it in a very straightforward terms. It's going to seem very simplistic, but it's so ekroni, it's so essential, basic, and principle to how HaKadosh Baruch Hu built us, and it works. And it goes as follows. If I commit the time to do something that I love, pure expression of me, hopefully every day, in each of the key areas of life, career, chesed, intellectual, and emotional. I'll give you some examples in a minute. If I dedicate the time to express my love, my interests, you know, we're so built to my family, my children, my spouse, all good. But wait a second. We know halachically, philosophically, in Judaism, the individual comes first and must come first in order for he or she to be able to give to another successfully, to love another person successfully. Now, we set up a regimen. First of all, we set the headline. I want to be a builder throughout my life. I want to be that person who is quiet with a great sense of quiet strength, who continues after one nice accomplishment to the next one. And maybe the next one is more than a nice accomplishment. It's an outstanding accomplishment. And then on to the next one. And it should never end. How do I do that? I have to feed me. So it takes courage for a person to claim his or her identity. This is Ricky Cohen. This is what makes me happy. This is Chacham David Shemula, who is kind enough to join us. This is what makes me happy inherently. What is it? I don't know. Let's see. It could be learning Torah, doing chesed, expressing myself emotionally in this way, having this career interest, and there's one other that I failed to mention a minute ago, and that is a very simple, practical hobby. Now, the great discipline here is that none of these things have to benefit anybody but me. I have to have strength and the clarity of identity to say, you know what? I love doing X. I love learning Torah. I love doing chesed. You know what? Those examples are too easy. Everybody should love those. I love bicycle riding. I love walking on the beach. And I love this idea for my career. Now, if I express myself in those areas, what happens to me? I'm now filling a sincere and primary fundamental need. And when I do that, the love of me grows. The confidence in me grows. I call this my emotional armor. You know, we have the same responsibility towards our children, and we all recognize it. Our goal with our children is to enable them the self-love that will enable them to do everything else successfully. If a child loves his or herself, then his career will work out, his marriage will work out, and on and on. If the opposite is true, well, I'm the case. So let's have the basic courage to identify what makes us happy. And again, in each of the following areas. Intellectual, that's generally focused around learning something. Again, our primary need for many of us is Torah learning, but it shouldn't be limited to that. That should be the primary learning for most of us. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hand and brilliance, Kivyachol, is in everything. So let me be satisfying my intellectual need every day, not to teach, not to grow in Torah, although those will happen as well. Not to become more worldly, not to love God more, although that will happen as well. But simply to say, this is who I am, and I want to be true to me. Beautiful. Same thing is true on a chesed level. I don't have to fit into a mold. In the old days, when Bikur Cholim was in its infancy, there was a small apartment across the street from Sephardic Institute on Avenue R. And we used to go there, some of us, as young marrieds. We were creating ideas. We went in and we painted people's apartments. And we hung mezuzot. And we started a Big Brother, Big Sister program. Why? Not because there was a need. Of course there was a need. There's endless needs. But because there were people who wanted to express their chesed that way. That's why we started them. Because by starting a Big Brother, Big Sister program, Joe or Jack or Susan could now find his or her chesed expression. So if it's not in front of you, find it. Number 3, on a career level. Well, that's the premise of what we're talking about. It never ends. It never should end. It's an important part of our neshamot, who we are, to create, to build on a practical level in this world, to engage HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world in a ma'asi perspective, as Sarah mentioned a little while ago. And that should be constantly being renewed as well. Don't be afraid to identify it. On an emotional level, the same thing. Let's not do the b'di'avad, which is good. It's great to love our children and give to our children. Of course we do that. Pashut. But let's figure out how to give to us and how to have a good time. And then finally, there should be a hobby. A hobby is beautiful. You know, there's a very interesting Rambam that says that at the end of a person's 120 years, inshallah, one of the questions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to ask everyone is, you know, I had so much beauty in my world, and you had access to it. You could have driven to see this place. You could have gone online to see that place. You could have walked in that place. You could have listened to that music, whatever it might have been. Why didn't you? It's part of the beauty of my world that I brought for you to engage, to become part of you. So here again, if a person has the courage to say, this is who I am and I love it, and I'm going to do it, and engages a couple of times a week in each of those areas of individual expression, their capacity for self-love will be rock solid and will grow. And I'll tell you, this is a big challenge in America. America is not a self-loving country. It's a great country, but it's not a self-loving country. Western perspectives don't promote this. And Christian perspectives, which overwhelmingly are very nice, don't promote this either. It's more of a focus to others. It's a doing for others. It's a turning a cheek. It's all of that perspective of putting others first. We don't do it. We can't, we shouldn't. We put ourselves first so that we can maximize all that we give to others. Okay, so far? Anybody want to unmute with a question or a thought? Everybody's cool? Great. Okay. Number 2, in terms of building an entrepreneur's heart. We mentioned in one of the other classes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes out of his way in describing the creation of the human being to say that he gathers together, so to speak, all of that which was created before us. And he says, come together, so to speak, and let's create the pinnacle of creation titled man. And then he says that, you know what? And this man is B'Tselmenu Kidmutenu. Once again, this man is in the spirit, in the design, in the image of the greatest, of the most perfect. So what does that lead us to? And here again, this is something we have to continue to fight to reclaim for ourselves. And of course, to help those around us to hold, which is, I am great. Yes, correct. That's right. It's not apologetic. Does it mean I'm perfect? No. Does it mean HaKadosh Baruch Hu made me a certain way? Yes. Is that mine no matter what? Yes. And as we've said in the past, a notion of greatness is the antithesis of arrogance. It's the antithesis of narcissism. Chum David Shemula on this call, my dear and cherished cousin and an outstanding Talmid Chacham and educator, I would imagine he would concur in saying the following. If a child sitting in your classroom, Chacham, understands his inherent greatness, he will be more confident to ask a question. He'll be more confident to approach a sugya, an area of learning that's very hard, because he believes in himself. He knows who he is. And guess what? It's who we are. And we have to qualify it. Because if we lived at a different time in another place, I would skip the qualification. But because I know people struggle with this, I'm going to emphasize the qualification. No problem. We're not perfect. Fine. Good. Use that sort of dismissal to qualify this perspective. But here again, as we said in the past, let's assume for a minute a great career opportunity or chesed opportunity or emotional opportunity or intentional intellectual goal comes to mind, and I'm not feeling so good that day. I'm not feeling a great sense of love of self. People all the time are in that type of funk or in that type of negative mindset. And what will they do? They'll let it pass. Who am I to have this person love me? How many young adults did I speak with over the last 4 decades where someone was attempting to love another person? That other person could have richly received that love, but didn't think enough of herself or himself to do so. They didn't have the sense of greatness to say, I'm worthy of this. I'm worthy of this beracha. I'm worthy of this love. I'm worthy of this career opportunity. I'm worthy of this friend. I'm worthy of this spiritual leader being in my life. I'm worthy of having this mentor being a part of my life. The sense of greatness, it's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu went out of his way to define in us. We need to work hard to reclaim it, and as it slips away, which it invariably does, we have to grab it back. And there are 2 other components to this, and we touched on them in the first series of classes. And that is the notion of individuality. Yeah, these are more pashut. We all know these. Every individual is absolutely unique. Every individual has his or her own opportunities that evolve throughout his or her life based on how he or she shapes his or her life and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with that. Here again, we can never fall into the perspective of, this is the way it is, this is what I do, this is my boss, this is my employer, this is my structure. It doesn't work that way. It never should work that way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu never says, Dayenu, we did enough, we created enough, we built enough. We should never say Dayenu either. And part of the ability to say, I want to be mechadesh, I want to be renewing, refreshing, testing, trying, reaching, is to understand that I have a perspective about things that's absolutely different, even if it's different by a nuance, by 1% from the Hamon Am, but from the overall perspective, that's different enough. My idea doesn't have to be, I don't have to take a wheel from a truck and turn it into something altogether different. I can nuance the rubber in the wheel, so to speak, and impact the world and express myself uniquely in that way. And that's also very important to understand. When you look at those people who have lived the lives they wanted so much to live, and as a result of that, enriched the lives of others, they didn't reinvent the wheel, so to speak. All they did is tweak it. And tweaking something, that could be the great possibility, is enough. It's fantastic. So, point number 2 in the emotional armor is an acknowledgement of who I am and fighting hard throughout my life, whether I'm a young adult, whether I'm a person in the whatever stage of my life that I'm in, that nobody takes that away from me. That I have an absolute capacity to impact the world uniquely because HaKadosh Baruch Hu made me great. And it ain't perfect, but it's great. And greatness means there's an opportunity there that never goes away, that evolves and changes based on my glasses, my set of glasses and perspectives. Good. There's another element that should come as a result of the first two. It's very interesting. I'll tell you a quick story. So I have the great Beracha, Ronnie Hirsch, who's one of the giants of a philanthropist and leader in the Ashkenaz community, and has done a lot now community his way. He really adopted, he and his wife adopted our community as their own in a very substantial way, and he's done so much here as well. He started a program a number of years ago in Brighton Beach for Russian young adults, a Kiruv program called RAGE, Russian American Jewish Experience. And he fought to get this thing off the ground. And it was not even a pipe dream. It was much less than a pipe dream. And he funded it, and he raised money, and he dedicated his time and made it a great effort. I had the beracha of teaching in this program for many years, and I continue to teach there. And I walk very often. I'll walk home from the shul in Brighton Beach, where the classes are, and I spend my time on my way home thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the opportunity to teach these people, these young men and women, because I'm humbled by their sacrifice, by their intellect, and by their wantingness to learn. One of the things they struggle with, which I want to make a point of today because it's part of all of this, is as a result of them being, their families, being persecuted by the Nazis in Europe, and then being pillaged by the communists, they have a harder time trusting. They have a hard time trusting. What was the foundation of communism, and still is? The only thing you can trust in is the state. You can't trust in an institution, your spouse, or yourself. Now, trust is the key. It's the door opener to building. That's one of the things, lo alenu, that is so hard for them. And they have to work so hard to regain the ability to trust. Now imagine if the perspective of trusting was beaten out of you for 70 years, as the communists did to the Jewish people who lived in the former Soviet Union. You wouldn't have the ability to trust your spouse, yourself, anyone. We, on the other hand, thank God, don't have that struggle as overtly as they do, but we also have subtle challenges with trusting. People have hurt us. People have disappointed us. We've invested in certain people who hurt us and let us down or embarrassed us. Happens to everybody. But in order to build my great possibilities, my ongoing successes in each of these key areas of life, I have to learn again how to trust. And if I first work hard to claim my love of me, as we've discussed, by expressing that love in 4 or 5 key areas of life, and I acknowledge the greatness of me, now I have the armor, now I have the resilience to put my trust in others. Now, in the Torah system is a chavrutah system. It's a buddy system. Some of the rabbis say that even the fact that Torah started with the letter Bet shouts to us forever, you can't do it alone. And guess what? You not doing it alone isn't a chisaron. It doesn't mean you're lacking anything. It's the opposite. That there's greatness achieved in partnership, in learning through your love of self to put your faith in others. So, the next step, once a person is in the zone of working, ongoing, to claim a love of self and to fight hard to maintain it, and to claim a sense of self-greatness and fight hard to maintain it, now a person should look at his social landscape and be very careful in choosing that handful of people, could be one, who he has a superior level of trust for, and can become his success buddy. The same way when we learn Torah, we put our faith in another person, and he puts his faith in us to grow and intellectually and to challenge each other with an absolute sense of trust. The same thing has to take place. And it can only take place based on a love of me. So, in this process of attempting to become a builder, a visionary, an entrepreneur, and maintain that perspective forever and never let it get tired, I need to enjoy the association of a lot of nice people, no problem. But within those, that Hamon Am, so to speak, those many people, I need to be able to identify one or two or three who I can trust to be my partner in my efforts. And this person, if I'm a business person, they need not be a business person. If if my efforts are chesed oriented, they need not even be involved in chesed. It's not about that. All they have to do is be a person of intellectual heft and integrity, a person of ne'emanut, of loyalty. Everybody has one of those in his or her life. They may not be in your life forever. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes brings these people in and out. But when a person makes a decision to want to build something or grow something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu invariably will put that person or persons next to them, accessible by them, to be able to build. Sari, you want to say something? You good? Okay. Okay. So the ability to trust in myself and others and put that trust in others is absolutely, absolutely essential. Now, there's another very important element here, and I want to describe it as an emotional dichotomy. And what does that mean? It means the following, and it's hard. It's hard, but it comes from training as well. And what is that? That means that I have to have the courage to set very lofty goals, very big, ambitious goals, and then courage to put together a plan that's very small step oriented. This is hard, very hard. Some people don't have the courage to set that super great possibility, or even that possibility that's a reach at this point. Others have the capacity to do that, but don't have the courage, and it takes courage as well, to put together the step-by-step reality-based plan to get there. So what do we need to do? We need to articulate that great goal, as we discussed last week, by using our Ratzon Elyon, our higher will, that capacity that the human being uniquely has to think beyond rationale and reason, to push that aside and go with my gut, my intuition, my heart, that nishmat chayim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. I gotta articulate an idea with that, test it by asking myself, when I think about being engaged in this, how do I feel? And if the answer is that I feel excited and scared, I know I'm onto something. If I'm not excited, it ain't my idea, it's somebody else's. And if I'm not scared, the idea is not big enough. But then the next step, after I take this idea and I label it as pristine, I will not break it. I will not cynically rip it apart. I leave it. I trust me enough to keep it up there. Now I go ahead and I put together a step-by-step plan to get there. And the step-by-step plan takes the same courage. Most great ideas don't make it past the idea stage. Those that do, because God willing, a person had a sense of self-love, self-trust, and one or two people in his or her life to become partners in this, not literally, just emotionally and intellectually, more ideas don't make it past the third year. That's the model in most entrepreneurial societies. But those ideas that hold that idyllic vision and then accompany it with a 3-year time and action plan, it sounds so rudimentary. It sounds so practical. 3-year time and action plan, those are the ones that hit the grand slam. Those are the ones. So the emotional dichotomy that's demanded of us is to be able to think very big and then practice very practically. Good? Visionary and executioner, both. I can envision and I can execute the plan. So what do we do in this respect? Ideally, we put together a 36-month plan. Could be a 12-month plan, whatever works. Whatever works. And by the way, it could be a very limited plan, and it gets filled in over time. And then what I do is I attempt to dedicate half hour a day, minimum. Ideally, an hour a day, 5-6 hours a week to executing my plan. Now, assuming most people's lives are very busy and they have a lot going on and they have a full-time job, right? It's hard to dedicate more time, but it's essential. But everybody, I believe everybody has an hour a day, everybody. There were times in my life when I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning because that's what needed to happen. And guess what? It happened because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you the strength. So think very big, put together a time and action plan, let it be rudimentary. And as I mentioned when we started this call, we're wrapping this up today, but I'm happy to continue with anybody on a one-on-one basis who wants to build their idea. That idea is based in a step-by-step, reality-based plan. And ideally, it's an hour a day. Now, very quickly, imagine you have person A who came up with a great idea and doesn't yet go to the 30 minutes or hour a day commitment, perseverance. So a month goes by and they're still in the same place. But the person who had the discipline, the emotional strength to commit the time. Now, what does that time mean in the beginning? Researching, reading, finding out what the market looks like. I want to open a new learning program. What are the learning programs that are out there? Who's attractive? I want to open a new business in this type of clothing or that type of accessory. I want to open another health-related service. The beginning stages are who's doing what? How am I distinct? And now you start to just learn and to network and to grow. And you have the same two people. Person A identified the idea on July 1st, let's say, and didn't dedicate to 30 minutes or an hour a day, standing still on July 31st. Person B identified the idea on July 1st, and by July 31st has 20 or 30 steps ahead in the process because each day he took a small or large step forward. That's what we want to be doing. And finally, in order to build and maintain the entrepreneur's heart, in order to do so, we need to be able to appreciate the greatness of failure. We need to be able to appreciate that. People who are resistant to failure are doomed to the prison of mediocrity. We don't ever want that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't envision that. I'll raise my hand in saying I've had a lot of failures in my life, a lot. Thank God, thank God. We have, as we've mentioned in one of the previous classes, this passage in the early pages of Masechet Berachot that says that a person who hasn't stumbled for 30 or 40 days should be concerned because it means he or she is not challenging life enough. Some of you have heard this from me many times, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has taken less of an interest in you. What does it mean? You have to reach, you have to try, you have to fail. And guess what? What's the best failure? The most painful one. And what is that most painful failure? When it's public. And why is that the best failure? Because in a public failure, everything has been stripped from a person. He's embarrassed, he's ashamed, he's scared, and he's hurt. It's fabulous. It's a liberator. It means at that point, when the person dusts off his bruised legs and dries his tears and stands up, everything in this respect has been taken from him or her. You can't hurt me again. I lost my money, let's say, I lost my time, and I lost my pride in front of person X. Fabulous. That's the greatest, one of the greatest gifts HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us. Because the people who are able to stand up after that have extraordinary strength and resilience. Because in that respect, in this respect, in the sense of entrepreneurship, whatever could be taken from the person was taken. So you can't hurt me anymore. I've got it now. It's me and God. And so essential, they when I taught in Baruch College, I taught there for a few years, they made a sweatshirt up at the end of the semester, wishing you all a giant public failure. It's true. I did. And they put the caveat underneath, as soon as possible. Sooner the better. Because the sooner it happens, the sooner you take that hit, the sooner you get up, and the sooner you're built. Many people are afraid of failure, and therefore they become imprisoned. They're imprisoned in mediocrity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is anti-mediocrity. As I mentioned in one of the other classes, and it's relevant to this time period in our calendar, Rav Soloveitchik says that the failure of Bnei Israel from the time of the Miraglim, of the spies in the desert, through the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, was all about a lack of resolve, a lack of self-identity, a lack of willingness to build and to grow. And those nasty things that they did were just symptomatic of that inherent failure. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. Life loves us. Failures are liberating. Failures are empowering. They mean that God is with me and cares about me. God forbid you don't have a failure for a month or two. That's when you better be worried. If you have one, God willing, it means you're rocking, you're doing, you're pushing. This is the system. So, to pull it all together and conclude. Life is exciting, beautiful, special, never meant to be copacetic, never meant to be on a plateau, or I'm cruising, or I'm burning time, or I'm passing time, or I've done my thing. Do your thing until you come up with another thing. And why do we do it? Not to benefit those around us, who we will benefit. We will. But why do we do it? We do it to be enriched and happy and energized and productive and engaged with God and engaged with life. So, I think we've touched on the tools to launch. And as I mentioned a couple of times, I'm happy to pick it up with any of you who'd like to. If anybody has any thoughts or questions, if you want to unmute, and we'll tackle any ideas. Sarah?
Okay, so you answered a very big question of mine. I was always wondering why. I work in the Holocaust Museum, just to tell everybody, and I was always wondering why the survivors became so successful. They became multi-zillionaires. And I would have sat back thinking they were going to, like, just waiting to die. But each failure, you know, they must go on and say nothing could be as worse as what I went through. So they tried everything. And
that
they
is
became
an incredible point. That's an incredible point. It's
I've
really
been
true.
noticing that.
The successes of Shoah survivors are the
Is
greatest testimony to what
incredible.
we've been doing. Fantastic. Fantastically true. Great. Any other thoughts? Everybody good? Yeah? All righty.
So wait, Ricky, you want to start a class with us?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to start a class with us every week?
So what
Because
we'll
I'm-
do is, I want to think about the topic to pick up after this. I'm thinking about maybe the Yud Gimel Ikarim, the 13 principles, or Mishlei, something like that. And in terms of the career and entrepreneurship, I'm happy to work with anybody one-on-one, to take what we've learned and get it moving.
Put it together. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Ricky, I'd like to continue my journey with you.
Yes,
Thrilled.
yes,
Would be happy to
Sure.
do so.
Yes,
Happy to do so.
yes.
You see
Okay.
the likeness? We're first cousins.
Yeah. Oh, you're
Right.
asking them?
All
Okay,
right,
great.
thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. I appreciate it. Good
Thank
thing.
you.
Thanks, Ricky.
All the best.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Take care.
Laura.